every leader should be working to achieve impact that is irreversible. If you wake up tomorrow and say, what is it that I can do differently from what I did yesterday to start doing and putting in place irreversible impact, then you will achieve a legacy that truly makes you one of those legendary leaders that we consider wise.
You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. How's it going, my friend? I'm so glad you're tuning into the Going North podcast because I have some great news, folks. The show now has some wonderful merchandise, so check out the wonderful link in the show notes to tpublic.com/stores/Dom-Brightman and click on that link to cop some wonderful gear based off of my wonderful tagline, advance others to advance yourself, because we got it in t-shirt form, hoodie form, and you can choose whichever color you like. So if you want to get it in pink, green, black, white, blue, yellow, red, we got you covered for the whole rainbow, especially for t-shirts and hoodies and everything else. So check it out all in the show notes and rock this gear. Heck, even take a picture of this wonderful gear, shoot it to yours truly, and I'll post it on my social media and tag you officially as well as one of the fans of the show, and you'll definitely get a shout out during one of the episodes in the future. So definitely click in the show notes, cop some merchandise, support the show, and let the world know that you have an abundance mentality of advancement. Now let's get on with the show, and I'll say it now since I might not say it in the ending credits. Advance others to advance yourself. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors is Black History Month at the start of 2022 when you're listening to this one, and we got one heck of a powerhouse author for you today, baby. Hashtag Black Excellence on steroids, because a man's been through it, and he is here today because a man is a freaking living testimony to what happens when people kind of get a little too crazy. Because my goodness, today's author in particular, one of the world's most sought after communications and executive consultants. And over the last 15 years, he's helped leaders at some point of the most influential companies in the world realize daring pursuits, from building college campuses to addressing global wealth. So my man right here is also a survivor of leadership sabotage. You heard that right, folks. Leadership sabotage. Like, wait, those two go together? Like, yeah, when you hear this man's story, you're going to figure out why. Because our man dealt with betrayal, theft, and deceit that cost him nearly $700,000 and threatened his livelihood in an unthinkable way. And this man has a wonderful story of resilience to inspire others. And he's going to be inspiring us today. So let's give it up for Mr. Black Excellence himself, the BW, the brilliant and wonderful Brandon Wilson.
Dom, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for having me on today. And you're right. You know, leadership sabotage is everywhere. It's working even when we are not. And it's a subject that nobody wants to talk about, let alone write a book about. And I will test that notion by challenging your audience tomorrow. Don't do it today, but tomorrow, go to the bookstore, look up your favorite author, go to the business section of the book, or business philosophy, wherever you go, and you'll see books lining the bookshelves from incredibly smart people about leadership. And those books will be focusing on a few subjects. They'll talk about resilience. They'll talk about hustling. They'll talking about hard work. They'll talk about integrity. All of those things. But you will not find a book as comprehensive as Sabotage, Leadership That Overcomes Betrayal, Theft, and Deceit, that focuses on the limiting forces that surround each of us as we go along our journey to do incredibly impactful things. And that's why I wrote the book, because there is a very pronounced gap in the leadership development genre and the business development genre of the publishing industry that needs to be filled, because every leader, regardless of how big or bold your pursuits are, you're going to face bouts with sabotage. And it's important that you have the tools needed to overcome it in order to fulfill your destiny.
And oh man, that's right. Fill up that cup, that jar, that well. Heck, even fill up the piggy bank too. My goodness. That's what I'm talking about, indeed, man. Because, yeah, you're so right about that, especially in the leadership spaces. Like, you get into the leadership books, like, yeah, they're going to talk about some setbacks they had to deal with, but never like in the forefront. It's like right in front of you. Sabotage. It's like, oh, shoot, for real? Like, what's this about here?
Yeah, it kind of smacks you in the face. But you know what's interesting about that? That's how it happens, right? I think it happens in that same way for many, and unfortunately, it's unexpected, and it takes people off guard, and when they realize that they are facing the forces of betrayal, theft, and deceit in all of its forms, because there are multiple forms that betrayal and theft and deceit represent themselves in our life. When we are confronted with it and realize that that's what's happening, the game is almost over. I mean, the bank account's cleared out. the pink slip has already been written. The the soulmate has already been taken away.
Yeah, you can say that again now, man.
We need to get real, right? And a lot of times we don't want to talk about the things we either had to overcome along our leadership journey. We don't want to talk about the things that defeated us and delayed our destiny along our leadership journeys. And we hold those back for even when mentoring the next generation of audacious leaders. And we do it because of a few things. So to write my book, I had to I chose to interview several leaders, a lot of CEOs, and a lot of them had these incredible stories of sabotage that they hadn't shared with anybody. They were private. And one of the things that I realized is that the embarrassment, the shame that often accompanies being a victim of sabotage, or an overcomer or a survivor of sabotage, robs the next generation of their ability to prepare for those same bouts. And we do a disservice to leaders, even in the future, by withholding those stories. So in my book, I talk about how to deal with disappointment as a leader, which is really, we'll talk about sabotage, we'll talk about what it is. I will even share during the show how to see sabotage, betrayal, theft, and deceit before it even strikes you. So you can look at your buddies, look at your network, look at the people you're managing and say, uh-oh, that person there has all of the attributes talked about by Mr. Brandon Wilson for being a saboteur. And he or she will probably enact this. So we'll talk about that. But the first thing I want to talk about is disappointment. There is no silver bullet for completely ridding leadership and self-sabotage from our lives. And if we are victimized by it, it is important to understand how disappointment works in our life so that we can also overcome that to inform and share those lived experiences that we have with others, so that sabotage doesn't repeat itself for the next generation. Colloquially, that we refer to that as giving way to generational curses. And there are such things as generational curses in leadership development. And it's important that we stop that right at the root as well. So that's where I want to start, is talking about that disappointment, and this is not a silver bullet, but I will spend our time today giving you some equipment and some tools to minimize your exposure to leadership and self-sabotage so that you can ultimately fulfill your destiny.
Man, oh man, you said something. Well, you said a lot of things powerful, but the thing that just caught my ears and made them perk up a bit behind these ear headphones is generational curses and leadership. So we're talking like nepotism here, or is that something totally different?
Well, it's completely different. I will first start off by defining that as saying that there are leaders that we consider to be incredibly wise. And these are the leaders who we want to be our mentors. We seek them out. The question is why do we consider those leaders wise? And there are a myriad of reasons, but one of the most common reasons why we consider those leaders wise and we seek their counsel is because they have gained mastery in getting their leadership journey and their leadership pursuits from A to Z with as little resistance as possible. They figured out ways to discern who were believers, who were detractors, who were obstacles. And they know how to build strategies for their leadership journeys to get them all the way to their maximum abilities and their maximum destiny. Those leaders have a way of imparting that wisdom on other generations. And we often refer to those generations that they impact as their leadership tree. You see it a lot in coaching, like in football, basketball coaching. People talk a lot about Nick Saban and say, oh, they're from the Nick Saban tree. And they always chart the success that these folks had because of the tree. Now, taking that analogy, I want all of your audience members to think for a moment, what if that tree is poisoned?
Ooh.
What happens then? So that's what I mean by a leadership, a generational leadership curse. If you are a poisoned leader and you are wise because of your lived experience, and you know how to structure your leadership journey in a way that reduces resistance so that you fulfill your ultimate destiny, but then you don't impart that wisdom on other generations, then you stymie those you impact. And that's what I mean by leadership curse. And I went to a school a public school. I'm a public school product, and I graduated. I'm a believer in all education, but I heard a lot of teachers throughout my life, and I hear it even now, who go to class and who says, I got mine. You need to go get yours. So that's what that sounds like. I like to give an example from a 30,000 foot and an analogical example, and then a real life example so that there's no confusion about what I mean about generational leadership curse. Those students, if they marry themselves and their leadership journey to the insights and wisdom of people, of leaders who withhold that information, that wisdom, that lived experience because of shame, embarrassment, disappointment, or inability, low self-efficacy, then the tree that they're growing is poisoned and cursed because they're limiting the branches from fulfilling all of it needs to produce righteous fruit.
Man, oh man. My goodness, this is hotter than fish grease already. It's barely been 10 minutes. Like this.
You invited me here, Dom.
It's barely been 10 minutes, baby. I'm glad we got you here today, man. My goodness, man. Cause you're so right, man. Cause like a lot of folks be like, especially the small-minded people be like, yeah, I got mine. You might as well go ahead and get yours. And it's like, well, it's good that you got yours. That's all well and good. But hey, could you at least have a more of an abundance mentality? I mean, and that's kind of easier said than done. But a lot of folks, they're like, oh, I understand self-care and self-preservation. But to be quite honest, like you'll actually advance a lot quicker if you have folks with you on your journey.
Ooh, you said it. In my personal philosophy is that the acme of leadership is being able to unlock the power of collective impact. It is the acme of leadership. If you look throughout history, and we could look at the plight of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, listen, I am a real student, rich student of history. And I will be the first to say that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not infallible.
Mm-hmm.
He was not the pure white dove that was the perfect case to culminate an entire world around in order to change society. But what he was a believer in the power of collective impact. And if we have the ability to tap into the talents of others, inspire and mobilize the passions of others to get after our own leadership destiny, then it is enough. It's so powerful that it's able to overcome even our own inadequacies. And it takes that ability to be generous. Just we're talking being a generous and abundant minded leader in order for us to truly achieve the audacious. Carter G. Woodson, who gave us this incredible month that we're celebrating, as soon as he said, hey, let us have a month where we reflect and celebrate on the accomplishments of Black folk. As soon as he said that, sabotage came out of the midst. Why y'all need a month? Why y'all need that time? As soon as Martin Luther King Jr. said, hey man, I envision a world that is ABC. Well, what's wrong with the world we have now? Mm-hmm. And it's important that we understand this. The moment we decide to be audacious, the moment you decide to be bold, you are also at the same time inviting saboteurs into your life. I told another guy, mentor, recently that sabotage lives on the doorsteps of success. So whatever success door you're going to have to learn how to get around, remove, or go through the sabotage at that front door in order to open up that opportunity. And your failure to do so robs the world of the benefits of your gifts. And two examples of that, we talked about Dr. King, a persistent target of sabotage, counterintelligence programs, relentless attacks by J. Edgar Hoover, bombings of people who believed in him. I mean, it was just untenable. Propaganda to say that he was a womanizer, not a family man. If he allowed all of those things to survive, those sabotaging attempts to survive, then we would not have the ability to see a world that is more united than the world we have today. Another example, Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs was sabotaged. He hired a guy named John Scully to run his company while he goes out and creates an incredible computer. He called it an act of betrayal. But in his second act, he learned from that experience and mastered the ability to understand and to discern who was for him and who was against him as he sought to fulfill his ultimate leadership destiny. And now we have a computer that can fit in the palm of our hands. But I dare say this, that was not what he was after. I think Steve Jobs was after something so much more precious. He wanted to ultimately change the way that we engage with the world and how the world engages with us. Now think about how bold that mission is. And if he allowed John Scully to achieve his act of sabotage, then we would not be engaging in the world in a rich and as a diverse and as a technologically agile way as we do today. So that's why the subject of overcoming leadership and self-sabotage is so important, because every listener that's hearing our voices today has an incredible gift to offer the world, but first they have to go through the front porch of sabotage in order to get through that door of success.
Man, oh man. And you were so darn right. Like, that's the thing. Like, when you declare something and you're making progress, especially if the public catches wind of it, especially probably even those that probably knew you for a long time, it's like, hey, what you doing over there? And then they be friendly to you and whatnot. And it's like, why are you so friendly all of a sudden? You cussed me out like 5 weeks ago. Like, why are you here?
What's really going on here, right? What is really going on here? And that's a great segue. One of the most powerful things in the book, and I'll share this with you right now because it's so important. There are other things in the book that are equally important, but I want your listeners to finish this podcast with a tangible set of tools for being able to see sabotage before it actually strikes your life. I think that's the most important thing. So first, let's talk about what betrayal is and what theft is and what deceit is. They bear different definitions, but they have the same aim. They seek to stop your ability to perform what you are designed to do. So think about an airplane that fails to fly. That airplane is sabotaged. Something happened in the engine. Something's wrong with the propeller. The pilot refuses to crank it up. I mean, forces beyond what that plane was designed to do is limiting its ability to do what it's designed to do. We are like those airplanes where there are forces on our lives. And if it is the pilot, then that is ourself. We limit ourself from achieving what we're designed to do. And there are 4 things that we can look for that are limiting forces, that if they are near or in your life, they point to a vulnerability that may say that you are exposed to undue sabotage in your leadership journey. I call them the 4 Horsemen of Sabotage. And in no particular order, the first horseman is jealousy. If you yourself, or if you are surrounded by people who have a propensity to be jealous, then they have a proclivity to taking action on that jealousy once it reaches a level of covetousness. So jealousy is a really common, a really infectious, a really contagious force. And luckily, we have the equipment needed to squash jealousy when it's a mere concept. But if we allow it to fester in our lives and our networks, to build and to grow in that petri dish of our leadership journey, then we expose ourselves to the hate that accompanies those jealous forces. And it sounds like, why is Dom always on that podcast? Why does Dom have a book? Why Dom think he all that because he a certified coach? It sounds like that at first, but then if we allow it to fester, then it starts to be accompanied with activity that says, I'm going to stop Dom from writing that book. I'm going to stop Dom from actually coaching. I'm going to stop him from doing podcast episodes. And so you see how it quickly escalates into something else. And think about that framework as I talk about the other 3 horsemen of sabotage. The other that I like to focus on is arrogance. Arrogance is, well, arrogance needs no introduction.
Now that's gold right there.
Arrogance introduces itself.
It's true.
Leaders who are consumed by arrogance are vulnerable to being driven by blind ambition, meaning that they have a goal and a destination that they're driving to, and their arrogance puts blinders on them that incapacitates their ability to see the damage or harm or the impact that their actions have on those who surround them. And it's those blinders, while we ambitiously pursue ourselves or get to A to Z, that causes them to not care or to not see or to not be concerned with the damage that they cause or the impact that their activities might have. And it makes them literally incredibly potent and disruptive weapons of sabotage, because they can cast you to the side, throw you under the bus, limit your potential, and not really care about it, because their ultimate goal is to get to their destination. The other horseman, the third horseman, is lying. The liars in our lives, if people have a consistently lie, or if we lie to ourselves, I keep saying we can do these things to ourselves as well. This is really important. Liars lie for two reasons. One, to distract from their present circumstances. So I need to get you to look at something else while I continue to either preserve my present reality, either preserve the things that I'm comfortable doing, or get you to look and be distracted while I do unseeming work. But look somewhere else. Don't look over here at me. The other reason, and this is an elevated level, an advanced level of liars. The advanced level of liars lie to intentionally harm others. So it's not just about themselves, but they are literally out in an effort to distract. They are out to harm, remove, destroy the journeys of others around them. Lock them up. They need to go to jail because they did A, B, C, and D. Well, you're in their way. So not only are they lying to distract, but they want to put you in jail as a result of, I mean, that's a whole nother level of lying, right? And then the last is seduction as the last force. And the seducers are really interesting people. They are incredibly charismatic, and they use that charisma to get you to join them on adventures, to do things that sometimes skirt the lines of ethics or gets really close to the lines of legality. And they dangle a lot of carrots that says, man, if we are successful, I'm going to get a promotion and you're going to come along with me. Now, their ultimate aim is to always have enough people around them that they've seduced that danger doesn't come close to their doorstep. They always have someone else to scapegoat and say, well, I didn't do it. This person over here did that. Seducers are often bullies because they now have you engage and intertwine and commingle with their unseeming activities, where you're now on the hook. And so you have to unwind and unwrap yourself from the web that's usually woven by the seducers. And so these are things we can see, you know, the jealousy, the arrogance, the lying, the seduction, we can actually see them. And they are the horses that all manner of sabotage, the activity of sabotage rides in on in our life to ultimately seek to limit you from fulfilling your bold leadership destiny.
Man, that is freaking powerful, man. The four horsemen, man. Like when I heard that in past interviews, that just led me to this somewhat corny as a play on the actual phrase, but which one would be the Ric Flair of these four horsemen?
The Ric Flair, baby. You know, the Ric Flair of them would probably be arrogance. That would be the Ric Flair of the four horsemen of sabotage, you know? Man, you are so hilarious, man. I tell you, but you got to have fun with the subject because it's such a heavy one, but incredibly important. And I will share with your audience a personal story that I have with sabotage. For nearly 20 years, I have worked at an agency that's provided communication strategies to some really important brands to the world and help those leaders at those companies do really big things. And we continue to do that now. I mean, we're working with Yale to get after global health disparities. We're working with Apple to realize a college campus that's built around innovation for historically Black colleges and universities. I mean, we're just doing some really bold things. And in the time of doing that, I often gain access and exposure and friendships with these executives who are leading these efforts, and uh, and their journeys taught me a lot because they were really generous in sharing the impact that their lived experiences had on their careers, but also their bouts with sabotage and how they overcame it. But my most powerful teacher about the waves of sabotage was my own life experience. I grew up, and you've heard these stories over and over again. I grew up without a lot of money in an impoverished community. I went to the only college I applied for, which is Auburn University, War Eagle, and I went to that school on a bet. A teacher dared me and bet me $20, $20 that I would fill out the college application, and I did, right, and I ended up getting accepted to Auburn University, and I got my award letter, my acceptance letter, while my family was homeless. I mean, we were homeless, and so me being a leadership whisperer or leadership caddy or a chief executive was far from my mind. So when it happened, I share that background story to share what was at risk when I met sabotage. I grew the company. We were doing great things. I decided to grow by acquisition, to buy other companies. And before I could open up my door, I had to go through that front porch of sabotage. And sabotage came from all corners. And the one corner it came from was a bully. This bully feigned himself as someone who was willing and ready to sell his business to me. He represented a $1 million plus book of business. So when he called, I answered the phone, and I should have let it go unanswered. He incredibly insightful leader. I allowed myself to be brought into a mentor-mentee relationship with him. Under the guise of mentoring, I took some bad business advice. And one of the pieces of advice that I took was to do the asset sale, to start a third entity under both of our names, where we would start putting money into this third entity. And ultimately, that would be the company that I would acquire. So I will be acquiring all the assets without the liabilities, without his debt. My lawyer said, listen, that is a common way of doing acquisitions like this, but it's not time to do that, Brandon. Why are you taking this advice now? And I said, well, there's a lot of opportunity here, a lot of money to be made. I'll go ahead and do it. And so we set up this third entity. I started putting money into this entity, all kinds of stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing, because I was blindly pursuing millions of dollars. I get a call from my attorneys about 1.5 years later, and they share, look, Brandon, we did a check for this third entity you giving your money to, and I have bad news for you. It doesn't exist. A gut punch. My lawyer said, where is your money going? I had no idea. So we said, listen, we got to discover your money. We have to separate this relationship. Here's a letter of separation. Go and give this to the person. And I never forgot, I stopped giving money to the third entity, and I had a meeting with my saboteur, my bully. And it's almost in mafia style. He's sitting on one side of the desk. I'm on the other side of the desk. And he says, Brandon, I know you got my money, and you're refusing to pay me more of it. And if I need you to give me my money today. And I said, listen, it's not your money, it's my money. and I'm not giving you any more of it. He said, okay, you can decide not to give me any more of my money, which is my money. But here's what I'm going to do if you decide to take that route. He leaned up, he thought for about a few seconds, it was a long pause, and he leaned up and he said, Brandon, if you decide not to give me any more of my money, I'm going to kill your wife. That was the statement. Mm-mm. And he didn't stop there. He leaned back and he said, I'll tell you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to call some buddies I have and at the police department, and he's a super connected guy. And I'm going to have some trumped up charges against you. And I'm going to have you arrested. Now, I know you're not going to stay in jail because you have the money needed to bail me out. That's why we're here. But all I want to do is get the mugshot. And I'm going to use that mugshot to blackball you from business and extract and choke the resources out of your house needed to survive and thrive. That's how I'm going to do it. And listen, the one thing I learned about bullies, and it is chronicled in the book, is they often tell you what they're going to do. We've seen it on the movies. I'm Lex Luger, and what I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. And you know what Superman does? He listens because they're going to do exactly what they said. So my Lex in my life, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. I fought back. I punched back. It cost me more than $600,000, nearly $700,000 to get out, but it gave me invaluable lessons that I am not shameful about imparting upon the leaders who are listening to this podcast. And there are other lessons, there are other stories of sabotage throughout the book. So I would encourage you all to know that you're not alone, that sabotage is inevitable, and that you are accessing and reading a book of someone who has lived what you are or might be going through in the future. And I'm honored to be in a position to be able to impart that wisdom on you.
Man, I'm honored to have you. I'm so glad you wrote this book, man, because a lot of folks be like, man, bully, man, that's for kids. Like, nah, fam, it's in adulthood too, man. This is why that adulting thing ain't all it's cracked up to be sometimes, man. It's
it is not.
You like, my God. It's like, I'm going to kill your wife. Really, dude? Like, and then I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it.
Are we really doing this? You know?
I'm like, dang, I watched Godfather 1, 2, and 3, but really, man? For real?
You know, there are going to be some saboteurs who listen to this show and say, man, that's a new one to add to my repertoire. I hadn't heard that one before. That is a new one. So you heard it here first. You know, Going North podcast. You know, like. But it is absolutely real. And before we close, I want to focus on the power of self-sabotage.
Here we go.
We sabotage ourselves, Dom. We steal, deceive, betray our own selves. And we do it for a myriad of reasons. The last 45% of the book is dedicated to that subject. And inside of the book, it outlines a spectrum of susceptibility to sabotage. And it calls out a few forces that might be leading you to sabotage yourself. And then gives some insight into where those forces might be coming from and why we allow them to persist in our lives. And then gives real anecdotes of how, or voice to those forces, so we know how they sound, so we can recognize when they want to start choking us, allowing us to choke destiny out of our own selves. There are things like, let's name some of the forces. Fear of success.
Yep, that's a huge one. That's a huge one.
The big one. fear of success, complacency is
Mm,
one. A
mm,
mindset of poverty is another one.
mm,
And they're all manner that we talk about in the book, and it allows you to really give yourself an assessment and to say, why do I feel like I'm incapable of doing? Why am I scared of taking that next step and doing it? And it allows you to really assess where those come from. And sometimes they come from our past interactions with authority figures in our lives, the way they treated
mm.
money, the way they talked about us, the way they viewed success. And Dom, I will share with you one of the most damning things we can do to our child is to refuse to prepare to overcome sabotage at the expense of, because we're scared of failure, or to let our child see us choose complacency and to sacrifice going after our ultimate goals. And we tell ourselves stuff like this, and we tell our children stuff like this. I'm too old to do something new.
Mm. Lies.
It's too much risk to do that. We don't have the money to do A, B, C, and D. Nobody wants to give me a loan. I mean, we tell our, and our children hear this. And when they grow up, they find themselves on the spectrum of susceptibility to self-sabotage. And that's how they get there. I want to say that's how they get there. It is an
Hmm.
important thing to acknowledge and to recognize. And my book helps you to overcome those self-limiting forces so that you can ultimately not rob and steal things from yourself.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, well then again, what the second one probably ain't gonna be as quick. But first, quick question, since I've been loving the answers folks have been giving. So, if this book Sabotage was a food item, since it's food for the mind, what food item would it be and why?
Goodness. This, if it was a food item, sabotage would probably be, and it has to be a food, something that we want to eat. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you don't
I,
want to eat, well, then again, you have to
well,
want to
I
eat. It's a
do. I,
good
I know.
book.
I know exactly what it is. It would be. This book would probably be sushi, and I
Oh,
share with you why.
okay.
You have to eat it all in one take. Like, you can't bite little pieces of sushi. So whenever you get one sushi on a chopstick, that's an entire segment of sabotage, whether it's learning about defiance, learning about bullying, learning about people who seduce us, whatever. And you have to take it all. The other thing is that is raw.
And it goes bad if you leave it out.
And it goes bad if you leave it. And it goes bad if you leave it out of your life. But if you take it, it is healthy for you. It's
Hmm.
healthy for you. So I think it's sushi is the best way to describe uh, to describe the book. And it is an easy read. It's about 260, 270 pages. And inside of those pages is, in my mind, the most comprehensive subject, uh, uh, comprehensive resource on the subject of sabotage. And we need it in our lives. We need it.
You can say that again. You can say that again. Well, coming down to the question every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're at 25 again, but you're in 2022 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
The best advice I would give to myself, if I could talk to my 25-year-old self, knowing what I know today, is to not believe what people say that I can't do.
Mm,
That's what it would be. And to start believing that the things they say that I can't do are really declarations of the things that they cannot do.
mm,
sabotage is real. It's real. Folks try to make their lived experiences yours.
Mm.
And you have your own life. And if you are 25 years old and you're listening to this podcast, one, good for you, because you are making investments in your leadership journey. So kudos to you. And also, if you are 25 years old and you now know some of the things that I know because I've shared it here, don't let people steal this information from you by forcing you or encouraging you to not put it into action. So when you start to take that next step, people are going to say you are crazy. Why are you quitting your job to start a new business? Why are you deciding to learn how to ski and you're 55 years old? Why? Like, nobody does that. That doesn't make any sense. Real example, and then we can wrap. I love LinkedIn because it allows you to see the leadership journeys of other people. About 15, 16 years ago, there was a guy that I went to college with who was leaving a corporation. And every time someone leaves that corporation, the senior executives and the vice presidents and the managers, they always say they failed. Why are they leaving? Why are you leaving? Nobody leaves here. And they do it to stop other people from leaving to pursue their passions as well, right? I don't want them to talk about me that way. Well, a couple of days ago, 16 some years later, that guy's now a general manager at another corporation. I know he would not be that where he was, but he decided to take the step. And people don't want you to take the step. Nope. They didn't want Carter G. Woodson to say, let's celebrate Black achievement. They didn't want Jan Metzelegger to say, hey, let's reinvent or learn to develop the shoe. They didn't want Dr. A.G. Gaston to become the first Black millionaire in Alabama. They didn't want, come on. You just got story after story after story, but they took the step. And so I would tell my 25-year-old self to take the step.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Man, if y'all ain't catch this hot fire, this is like probably only, I'd say about a good, maybe 3% of what my man Brad has got in that head of his, man. He dropped some of it today. So for folks who want to dive into a little bit more of what you got, buy your books, heck, even the audiobook too, which is freaking awesome. What's the best way for folks to do so?
Well, listen, you can go to Amazon and type in Sabotage, Brandon Wilson. But the easiest and most memorable way is brandonwilson.co. brandonwilson.co. Again, that's brandonwilson.co. I have my bio on there, my story. My book can be purchased there, but you could do something even more special when you go to brandonwilson.co. You can book time with me for free to share with me what's happening in your leadership journey, to answer questions about the things that may be blocking you for fulfilling your ultimate destiny, and view me at brandonwilson.co and my book literally as your leadership caddy. I am skilled and prepared to point out the hazards along the journey so that we can clear your leadership runway so that your plane can achieve maximum speed for takeoff. Let's go.
Oh my goodness, let's go indeed to brandonwilson.co, baby. Let's go. Yes, indeed, man. Like, my goodness, like, dude, this is freaking hotter than freaking fish grease, man. I'm telling you, it's hot, good stuff, man.
Oh, thank you.
My man dropped at least a good freaking, I'd say at least a good 5 tennis bracelets on you, folks. I'm telling you, y'all better get these gems, y'all. I'm telling you, y'all better get these gems, man. So, any parting words before we close up shop?
Yeah, be your best. Do your greatest, and don't be deterred. Every leader should be working to achieve impact that is irreversible. If you wake up tomorrow and say, what is it that I can do differently from what I did yesterday to start doing and putting in place irreversible impact, then you will achieve a legacy that truly makes you one of those legendary leaders that we consider wise. This is your moment. Let's take it.
You just got done listening to another powerful, power-packed episode of the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed what you heard. Go check out the guest stuff. It's all in the show notes on the website, donbrightman.com, and also reach out to those that you've just heard as well. And keep going north.